Welcome to Our Soul Whisper with Cathi Belmont and co-host Dr. Pat, a sacred space for self-discovery, healing, and transformation. At the heart of Our Soul Whisper is the sacred truth. When we pause and listen inward, the soul always speaks. This show offers a safe, empowering space where those whispers are heard, honored, and lovingly guided into full expression. Each episode invites you to be curious about yourself and the reality you're in, while gently reminding you that you are exactly where you need to be. Let today's message settle in your heart. Maybe even journal about it. And if something resonates, peace, clarity, or insight, pass it along to someone whose soul might be calling for the same. Keep listening inward. Your soul knows the way. Our Soul Whisper starts now. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Pat, and welcome to an incredible show. And I want to tell you a little bit about Cathi for a minute. You know, Cathi Belmont created, how should I say it, a movement. And the movement started from within. And whenever you have a movement that started from within, what you're really looking at is unlimited possibilities and potential. And this is what today's show is about. For those of you that haven't heard enough about who Cathi is, she's one of the most incredible coaches that taps in to the multi-directional nature of spirit. But the intention of this is for you. The intention of this is to help guide, to provide insight, because I don't know about you, but when you're in the middle of chaos, when you're in the middle of anxiety, when you're in the middle of, you fill in your own blank, very difficult to find direction, guidance, or even get to a place of peace. Today's show is so important. How spiritual life coaching supports real change. Now, I will tell you this, and then I'm going to turn it over to Cathi. Anyone in a 12-step program or anyone in recovery, you will get a lot of help in whatever program you pick. But what you may not get is the kind of coaching you need to make that second step and beyond reality, to change and transform your life. So today, get ready for this, but more importantly, before you sit down and you come up with that New Year's, I don't know what you're going to call it, resolution, who knows? You better take a look at why they don't stick. Cathi, great show topic. And boy, how timely. Awesome. Thank you so much for this today.
No, you're welcome. I was just, obviously looking at, New Year's and, the end of a year, end of a cycle. We all have cycles in our lives, but a lot of us tend to go to, okay, well, what do I want to do in the next year? And it's really looking at what change do we really want to make and making them stick. And also really focusing, we'll get on a little bit later, is acknowledging ourselves how far we've come through the new year. And so really want to spend some time on how goals, resolutions, things we want for ourselves don't stay in our lives for very long. And then really a lot of it is how we can be supported through that to get that real change that we long for, and that sometimes we just are like, man, I did it again. Well, there's always next year. So
I can't wait for you to talk about it because, I haven't shared a lot of detail, but as time goes on, I will. When we set a plan or a pace or whatever you're going to talk about today, there's setting it in motion with a spiritual practice or with a spiritual underpinning or without. So take us on the journey of why most New Year's resolutions don't stick.
Well, I think a lot of it is, we get to that place where, there's pressure. Well, I think I need to do this. I should be doing this. Or maybe there's shame there, you're feeling the shame that you need to somehow change yourself to feel better. Or there's that comparison, kind of looking at others, seeing where people are, oh, I want to be over there. And those things can really keep us from making those changes we want. It's also, we have those conversations with ourselves. Well, I'll be happier when, or I'll get healthier, next week, or I'll do better. And just getting real deep for a minute, really inviting the listeners to say, well, we already are that. We already are that happiness, that health, and that betterness that we want. And so it's really learning to embrace that. And it's also, I think, a lot of it, which it all ties together, is who we think we should be rather than who we truly are. And that means in the present. And then just facing those fears and patterns that are unseen. And there's also that accountability piece. And I know some people say accountability, there's a lot of different definitions we have about that. One way I like to explain it to people is that answerability to yourself. How are you going to support yourself in those action steps that you set, that we set in a session to support you and where you want to go? Is that going to be writing it in a calendar? Is that going to be talking to your friend and say, call me every day to ask me if I did this? Those are steps that you put in place to support you. What ways? So it's those kind of things that are explored. And so it's not about setting goals that are on the surface, but really getting in touch with what's important to me right now.
I want to ask you this question. Accountability it's a very important word. I got to tell you something real quick. I went off and I did research, and accountability wasn't the word that I studied. It was obligation. And I
Mm,
want to tell you that the another word for accountability, believe it or not, Cathi,
mm,
is when you say to someone, and I had to make an amends to my team about a week ago because I didn't realize how quickly time went by. And I didn't even realize I didn't tell them about my move.
mm,
I was talking about it on air, but somehow I thought I told them.
mm,
And then I was like, Jessica says, when are you going to tell them? I had to take accountability for that. But by then, I had to start to rebuild trust
mm,
because
mhm.
when you don't take accountability, believe it or not, people believe you're obligated. You're obligated to hold your word. So let's talk about these patterns because underneath it, stinking thinking and fear, right?
Yeah, and it's looking at, what's underneath the not saying what needs to be shared or be said. So it's that inner exploration of what's there. Maybe it's the rush, 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 or, you know, it's really kind of and when I say accountability to self, it's really kind of going back and answering to ourselves and say, well, what's really going on? And when we can do that, it tends to really come out and express
Mhm.
maybe what we need to say to others.
Yeah. Can you talk
So,
about that more? Because underneath it, I mentioned trust between other people,
mhm.
but what happens when we don't trust ourselves?
If we don't trust ourselves, it's if we don't have that inner trust. I mean, one way I find is when I don't have that inner trust, I tend to look outside for that. And that doesn't always work.
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
and I think too, we have that energy of is if we don't trust ourselves, others don't have that trust either.
yeah.
So I think it's this, everything's energy, and it's that inner strength to where we can say, yeah, I trust myself on this one. And when you say something or make a decision from that inner trust and knowing, people get it. People get it energetically. And I think we tend to forget sometimes that, we think we're fooling others, most importantly, ourselves, but we think we're fooling whoever. And people picking up on that energy. And the more conscious our planet is becoming about things and the openness, people pick that up. So,
So, can we talk a little bit about life coaching and what life
Yeah.
coaching does? And there's a
Yeah.
distinction between life coaching and spiritual life coaching. So,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit how life coaching helps people with this. Because I know for me, I have five coaches.
Yeah.
Why? I need five, um, right? For different reasons. But my spiritual coach comes first.
Hmm.
Let's walk us through life coaching from your perspective, but also
Hmm.
there is a difference
Yeah.
between life coaching. Tell us
Yeah.
about the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just wanted to go back and really define for people what life coaching is and also what this integration work is as well. I'll get a lot of questions that people say, well, what do you do? And I say, well, I'm a life coach. Well, what is that exactly? And people have their own ideas about that. And so I really like to think of it as it's a supportive, forward focused relationship where it brings together mindset, your emotional awareness, and your inner wisdom. And it brings all that together in a very supportive, sacred environment where you give yourself permission to create changes and align with who you are. Now, the spiritual piece that's more of a focus that I chose to go. Um, and it really goes to the spiritual part in all of us. And what is spirituality? What does that mean to you? As a coach, as a spiritual life coach, I have no attachment to what spirituality means to anyone else. If they come to me and say, well, trees are my spirituality or whatever, if that's what supports them and if that's the place they want to go, I go where the client wants to go. And so the client really defines what that is. And there'll be people who, I don't know what spirituality is. I want it, but how do I find my own? How do I reconnect with that? And that's a process within that. So um, it's really coming from that perspective. If some people don't want to go down that road, that's where life coaching comes in. Um, and then the integration to wholeness is really acknowledging and bringing forward those parts of us that are scared. And it often comes out when we have certain responses or reactions to something that are very emotionally charged that are uncomfortable. And those are signals to say, okay, what's going on? Who in there is uncomfortable and not feeling maybe safe or fearful right now? It can also be maybe a general underlying feeling of, I just generally don't feel like I'm worthy of this, or I generally don't feel, like you said, Dr. Pat, kind of fill in the blank. So it can also we don't know where that source is, but it's this feeling. It's also coming from that perspective as well. So it's really not, these services aren't really, these processes really aren't really about fixing you. It's really about bringing you home to yourself. And having that playful curiosity, as we've talked about before, and that courage to really look inward and see, okay, what's going to support me in really making those changes that are really important to me that seem to go by year after year or day after day?
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, you know, I keep referencing recovery because
Mhm.
it wasn't until I moved from, I don't even know what to call it, the logical aspect of it. You read the book, you work with the sponsor to the spiritual part. That's when my life changed,
Mhm.
when I was willing to accept it. Because I didn't enter that program saying, I believe in a higher, I didn't. I wasn't one of those people. I entered sobriety very angry at the God of my understanding until I wasn't one day. And the day that I stopped being angry was the day I started to hear the guidance and direction. Talk a little bit in the work you do, how you help people with that, because a lot of times we can't hear it until we get help from you to clear out the cobwebs.
Yeah. And before I go into that, I remember when you were sharing in the beginning, you shared about how spirit helps us multi-directionally. And I just love that because spirit helps us in ways that we coming from multi directions. I mean, we just don't know. And we have to, you know, I'm learning too that it comes through, you know, we're in this physical reality and we think it's going to look a certain way, but spirit works with where we are. And so it's really being present to what's going on. So I really loved that. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So it's really, you know, coaching helps you get clear, you know, before you make that commitment to yourself, you know, getting clear about what is it that you really want and what is it that's really important to you right now. And where are you being called forward? And maybe what are you running from? So you begin to start choosing what feels true to you. You know, it's also about releasing. That's what's been holding you back. It's identifying those beliefs and transforming them into, you know, your perfectionism into whatever that means to you. Turning your people pleasing. That's not that you maybe come to the recognition that it's just not serving you anymore. You know, it's acknowledging and looking at those beliefs. That's 50% of the work there. You know, it's really acknowledging, yeah, it's there. Okay, now what? And
Yeah.
it's
Let, let
setting
me let
those
me just
goals.
jump in there.
Sure.
The now what is, can I say it? I cannot do it alone. See, it's now what, and then it's the reason I have 5 coaches. Now
Mm-hmm.
what? And then you spend the same clogged up process
Yeah.
you have,
Mm-hmm.
and you start spinning. And guess what happens, Cathi? It gets
Mm-hmm.
worse.
Yeah.
So, other than that, you're the now what?
Yeah. Yeah. It's creating that space. That's what I found most powerful when I went through my training and then doing the coaching I'm doing. I got in touch with that sacred space where, you know, I as a coach am present. You know, I'm creating that presence, that sacred space for the client to come in. And I set that space even before we start the session. So when I meet with a client, they're in this sacred space already set, and it allows them to go where they want to go. And I think, you know, it's a powerful place, because if we don't feel safe and we feel like our coach is distracted or not present with us, we're not going to go there. And so I know with me having that space, it's given me the courage to go way down. And it could be one question, it could be one word that's said that could just explode into this awareness and like, oh my gosh, whole new world. So that's where, you know, I think I said last time, I like to think I do it alone, but you're right. When we get into our head, things start spinning. And to have that consistent support to say, you know, hey, let's look at this. I went into a tailspin last week. Well, let's get back on and look at it. So it's you know, we're here to help. We're here to assist each other. We're here to learn from each other. You know, we're as a coach, I can maybe I'm the student right along with the client. I learned so much, and I seem to always resonate with something so much. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really I love that coaching is defined as a partnership, because that's what it is.
Yeah. Gloria Steinem said something to me a number of years ago, and it stuck with me. And she said, Pat, we stand on the shoulders of all that have come before. And I didn't realize that what she was talking about is what you just said. It's not just standing on the shoulders of our mentors, it's standing on the shoulders of our clients who reveal themselves at the most vulnerable time. So,
Mm-hmm.
can you talk about the integration of wholeness and what some of the coaching steps are and what you do with people?
Yeah, it's really the person will maybe have an experience, and they'll say, you know, I went to this place, I went to this very fearful place, or these emotions of not being supported, not being loved came up. And I invite the client to go inside and ask who inside is uncomfortable. And then that starts the journey. that starts the journey of the acknowledgement of what needs to be expressed and said. And, sometimes that part of us is ready to come back into the present. And, sometimes it's not. And that's perfectly fine. It's really, there's no correct way, and it goes, it's an inner journey. It's very independent with the person. It's a sacred place. And I treat it very seriously. It's a very delicate place. There's a lot of trust there that, wants to come in. I mean, it's a place where you want to hold trust and sacredness, love, and a space where that part of us who maybe wasn't in that place, give them that space. And they also have the opportunity wherever they go, do you want to leave where you are? Giving that part of us permission that we didn't feel we had before. And that's so powerful. And it's really, the client does that journey, and that's what makes it stick. That's what makes that change for them. And that's what brings that, I always try to change my word healing, but it brings that rebalancing, that place of where we can see things differently. We respond to things differently.
Yeah.
And it may sound very simple, but it's so impactful. So impactful.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about how coaching supports people in a deeper way, especially the work you do about clarity before commitment.
Yeah, it's getting to that place of what's really important to me right now, and not going to those, I should be doing this, or somebody else is doing this, so maybe I need to too. It's really going on the inner and asking, what's important to you right now? What is really important to you? Is it your spirituality? Is it feeling more safe in the world? And again, kind of looking back at, we say we want more of this, but what's that? What's underneath that? What is it? You say you want more money, but what's really underneath that? Well, I just really want to feel supported and that I'm taken care of. That's the juice. That's the meat. That's where you really start going and saying, okay, yeah, that's what it is. And that's where it can take off. So it's really getting clear before you make that commitment. And that's what I mean about real change, asking yourself those questions. And it's just inviting people to say, instead of I want, I should, I need to, what's going to help me feel strong and energized?
Yeah.
So,
Well, Cathi, I've talked a million times about this being a 9 year and how it's an ending year. And part of the other thing that I know spiritual coaching does is it helps us release things that have been holding us back. And if there was ever a time to do that, it's now. But we do that. In fact, don't we do that so you can help people with spirit aligned goals?
it is. Yeah. It's getting in touch with, once we get to what's really important to us, that's where you're really in touch with really important. And that's where the conversation changes. It goes from that kind of surface goals to really what's really important to us. And then we get that feeling of, yes, that this is where I want things to come from. Maybe it's, if we get to that place of, I really want to feel strong and I want to feel alive, instead of I should lose this weight. We've been saying those statements, I should lose weight. To me, that feels kind of heavy. But if I say I want to feel strong and I want to feel energized, my gosh, there just brings a lightness to that. And that's so important, to get in touch with those feelings. Even if we can do exercises for a week of what sounds better, what feels better to me, what resonates. That's the soul of us speaking to us. And that's really about learning how to listen for that. And as a coach, if that's where the client wants to go, that's where I really, in the spiritual focus of it, a lot of the questions are, what's your soul telling you right now? What's your heart telling you right now? Is it telling you that you need to lose weight, or is it saying it wants something more? And that's where I think we really get connected to ourselves. And that's where that self-trust begins, kind of bringing this circle back to trust.
Yeah.
You know.
Well,
So.
I want to take a minute to make sure people know how to schedule time with you, how to work with you. This is a time of year where we all need a little extra support. Well, some of us need a lot of extra support. But in this case, how do people connect with you? And then I'd love to know your final message or your message you want to leave us with today.
Yeah, I would say just visit OurSoulWhisper.com and check out the website and go to services. There's free consultations. There's opportunities to even have a 30-minute free coaching session just to get a taste of what I'm talking about. We can take this in, and I want that experience. What is it really like? And to see as far as, how we resonate together. And I just want to say that, this life coaching really helps you grow forward. And this integration to wholeness really assists them in rebalancing us on the inner. And together with this forward movement and this inner rehoming, it brings us back to ourselves. And I think, that's the ultimate, bringing us back to the inner. And who are we? Seeing
Well,
our
thank
true
you,
self.
Cathi.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for reminding me, especially, that free will is great, but it's not spiritual connection. Thank you,
Mm.
Cathi. Happy holidays to you.
Yeah.
And for those of you out there, let's take a short break. We'll be right back with more. Thank you for listening to Our Soul Whisper with Cathi and Dr. Pat. Tune in every first and third Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific on transformationtalkradio.com and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Take a moment now to breathe in and reflect on today's message. If it brought you peace, clarity, or insight, let it settle in your heart and maybe even journal about it. Remember to like and share this episode with someone who's ready to listen within. May our soulful echoes ripple outward, awakening awareness and deep remembrance. If this show touched something within you, share it. Let's create a world where most of us pause, listen inward, and allow our light to shine. Visit OurSoulWhisper.com for more.